Romania perceived in Washington from a political, economical, even a strategic point of view?
There are various levels of perception in Washington. First of all, politically, the relationship is at its highest point after the visit that President Iohannis had in Washington last June. President Trump gave him a very warm welcome on that visit. So that was an opportunity for Romania to maximize the relationship with the US, to maximize the strategic alliance and the strategic partnership, and together with Poland to convert Romania into a regional player. So at the political level, at the level of the administration, I would say relations are great. Relations are on the right track at its highest, probably historic point. Since the Trump administration took office and since the new governing coalition in Romania started to govern the country, we have first seen last June a mission that US Ambassador Hans Klemm has taken to Washington of Romanian investors going to the US as part of the Select USA mission. These are Romanian companies who have the potential to select the United States as a business location for their operations. So I think there were over 10 companies who traveled with the US ambassador, met with US companies and talked about potential operations in the US. That was the first effort, followed by the October mission, which was a trade mission, which we just spoke about. Then in December, we had, at that time, Minister Ilan Laufer, the Minister of Commerce and Trade, meet with his counterpart, Wilbur Ross, which is a critical meeting, is a great meeting, we could even call it historic meeting. We have not had a meeting with a Commerce Secretary in many years. In fact, a visit of the U.S. Commerce Secretary has not happened in Romania since Ceausescu's time. You may remember the famous Nixon visit. And we're hoping that this year, most likely in the first half of September, U.S. Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross will come to Romania in response and to reciprocate the meeting with the Romanian counterpart last December. So this is an important signal. U.S. Commerce Secretaries do not travel to any nation. They travel to nations that are relevant, that are important for the future of the United States. And clearly, the strategic partnership we have with the U.S., I would say it's at the highest point.
What are the strengths that recommend Romania as a leader in Southeastern Europe, let's say?
Romania is the most attractive, I would say, location, the most attractive nation in the region. It has the fastest economic growth, and the U.S. alliance, the strategic partnership with the U.S. Clearly helps. When it comes to strengths, I think Romania has a very capable working force that speaks multiple languages, which is a key component of any multinational company that wishes to service clients across the globe, and that's, I think, the tendency for every multinational. So clearly the workforce is an important component. I think the fiscal regime, the current fiscal policies in terms of taxation, in terms of the 16% flat tax and the 5% tax on dividends is a critical component. The VAT on certain products, particularly in terms of food and agribusiness products, is another important attractive component of Romania. And obviously the geostrategic location, the geographical location that Romania presents, which is key to every US investor.
Do you think that the fiscal stammering that we have all been witnessing affects the interest of US investors, or their plans here?
We have been in Romania for over 11 years, and we have assisted over 130 clients during this time, obviously primarily from North America, but global clients. And regional clients from across Romania's neighboring region. Our experience has been one that indicates that short-term political changes do not impact strategic decisions. So investors are looking at long-term, mid-term obviously is important, but changes that occur for the short term are not those that really make the final call on investment. So I would say from that perspective, Romania is still in a very good position. The current legislation is attractive to investors, and I would say, at least our hope, is that every change to be made from now on will be discussed with investors and considered thoroughly, so that in the event there is important feedback to be conveyed to the legislative or the executive branch, the business community has a say as well.
Are Romanian companies prepared to receive strategic investors?
There are various tiers of Romanian investors. There are Romanian investors who are well positioned and they play in the major league. Those who are very innovative and they provide solutions to US companies in day one when other competitors around the globe can also compete with them. So we have those cases, and those are a great, I would say, echelon, a great branch. We have a middle tier of investors who have had some experience with the US and other investors, and they have hired young professionals, people with MBAs who have studied abroad or have had exchange programs, and they can guide the, let's say, the ownership, the board who may have a mixed background, part spent abroad, part in the nation, and those are very competitive. I think these are companies who will engage properly with investors, with funds, maybe in a position to consider listings at some point, given their development. And then you have a third tier, which I think needs significant support. And needs support from Chamber of Commerce, needs support from advisors like us, from embassies. Clearly the government could do more in terms of the training that's available to some of those executives. I think SMEs could benefit significantly of training that starts from how do you engage with a foreign partner, how do you communicate with that partner, how do you write your business plan, is that you have checks and balances, have you done a feasibility study to make sure that you're competitive, how do you make sure you minimize your risk. So the core business elements and management elements for SMEs, I think, could be significantly improved in Romania to be more competitive.
In which areas would you say that Romania has the biggest chances to attract US investors? Services?
I am a big fan of agriculture. The reason McGuireWoods opened the Bucharest office, it's for Smithfield, for us to support our anchor client. So I think Romania has a great agribusiness potential. Romania is a very attractive destination from that perspective. I think we need to see land consolidation so that there is increased interest from new investors, I would say. So agriculture is clearly a top industry. I think energy, given the richness of natural resources, is another important area of opportunities. I would say mining, so when it comes to natural resources, I would look at oil and gas, and we have learned about significant developments and discoveries that Exxon has made in the Black Sea and Romgaz has made onshore in Buzău County. So these are great assets, core assets that from an oil and gas perspective Romania possesses, which makes the country very competitive. Then also in terms of natural resources, I think mining is critical. I would hope that this government, and I very much support any initiative that brings the mining legislation to change to date. We have not had any mining law changes since 2003. This is unacceptable. Since then we joined the European Union. We have changed the environment law, we have changed a number of permitting laws, but we have not brought the mining law to date. So there is a lack of synchronization between laws that have been changed in order to be in line with the EU accession, and there have been laws that have stayed in the same position. So we have over 500 mines that could be reopened. These are closed mines that are unoperational, which with a simple change of legislation and a political decision could attract significant investors. And I think this is a great opportunity. In fact, I have seen that the current governing coalition has the mining sector in their governing platform. I know that without the change of the mining legislation, we will not be able to see changes. So again, over 500 mines closed that could be open, could create jobs in counties that I'm familiar with, where not a lot of foreign investors are rushing because they are lacking infrastructure or trained personnel. But historically, those areas have the trained personnel for mining services and mining production.
Do you have at the moment US companies that are prospecting the idea to invest in mining in Romania?
We have clients, North American clients that are interested in mining. We have European clients that are interested in mining. But again, in the absence of a change to the mining law, we will not be in a position to advise our clients to take a more proactive interest in country.
You've been promoting Romania for many years. When you talk to an investor who knows absolutely nothing about this country, what's the first thing you say to him to convince him that this region deserves his attention?
I think it's the Western values that we have embraced, the pro-American sentiment. You know, we at McGuireWoods have a say that the US, America is more popular in Romania than in the US. It's not a joke, I'm telling you. I spent part of my time in Washington, actually most of my time in Washington, and traveled quite a bit in this region and on other continents, and I have not met a more pro-American nation, despite the fact that throughout our history we have had some parts of our, some decades of our history where relations with the US were completely inactive. But at this time, I think the fact that there is a very supportive, very pro-American nation is always important for an investor. I think a dynamic and young community, the new generation of professionals who has traveled and learned abroad, so the workforce in terms of capable management and professionals willing and able to support US companies, I would say the human resource, human capital is the second most attractive. And finally, the reality on the ground, both the natural resources, what we just spoke about, and agriculture, so in terms of energy. And this is clearly important with the US also from an energy security perspective. So energy, infrastructure, and why not financial services. I know we have seen some changes on that front, but I think this is another key sector. I think Romania has a great future. I think we have seen that the economic growth, the engagement of our youth with their peers across nations, those who work for multinational companies and have the opportunity to engage with their colleagues, to be trained abroad, to travel, to come back and bring those ideas, it's clearly a pillar on our development. Also the return of a lot of Romanians who have lived abroad and have the guts, I would say, to engage with local partners and to have some startups in various sectors. I have seen a great development in the IT sector. I'm personally from Cluj. I was there this weekend and I was really pleased and surprised in the most positive way to see how well they have developed, how well they have done, and I think they have a bright future.
We have the urban area, as you said, Cluj or Iași or big business centers, which developed in the last years, and the depressing situation in the countryside. Is this an issue for an investor trying to come here? This unequal development?
The unequal development is obviously one that in part is due to the infrastructure, the lack of infrastructure in Romania. And this is probably one of our biggest challenges. I could see that Ford, the company that I assisted in Romania, that I assisted from day one, 11 years ago, when we started the negotiations with the Romanian government, when we talked about our only need in this entire process has been related to infrastructure, to make sure that Ford and its suppliers have the necessary infrastructure, nothing science fiction, nothing sophisticated, but the basic infrastructure to be able to travel in terms of commute, in terms of logistics of our goods and services across Romania in order to export, because ultimately, as you know, over 80% of Ford's production is going to export.
Talking about Ford still hasn't received what it asked for.
There are some developments.
Some progress.
There are some developments, but we have a number of additional needs that have always been on the table. They're not an element of surprise. The Craiova-Pitești roads needs to be extended so that traffic can increase, speed can increase. We need to have the bypasses, two specific bypasses in Balj and Slatina. We cannot go through the city. These are heavy-duty trucks and they go 24/7. We need to have those basic infrastructure resources in order to function at the existing business plan.
Talking about visas, do you think that joining Schengen would help in this matter?
You're talking about the visa waiver program.
Visa waiver, yeah.
Right. Romania and Poland are uniting their efforts to convince the US Congress to waive the visa system for the two nations. I think it's important to give this recognition to a strategic partner, to a strategic ally, that they have the same access as their neighboring countries have, as Hungary, as the other Visegrad countries. So I very much hope, and I said that at the very beginning of our conversation, that we need to see increased dialogue, increased level of meetings and communication and exchanges between the US Congress and the Romanian Parliament. The Romanian Parliament has an opportunity to discuss with their counterparts. This is ultimately a decision of the US Congress. In the event they will make changes to the current immigration legislation in the US, and members of Congress will be actively discussing with Romanian members of the parliament, I think Romania and Poland have a good chance to make this change. So my hope is this will happen sooner or later. And it would allow, first of all, I think it would increase confidence that Romania is treated equally with the other nations that have the visa waiver. Second, it would really it would increase the engagement of commercial partners as well. In addition, if you have traveled to the US, as a non-visa waiver, you cannot apply for specific services that allow you not to wait in the queue, so you could skip the queue. Especially for a businessman, when they travel after long hours, 15, 20 hours from Romania, they may have additional business meetings. They don't have the time to wait for an hour, 2 or 3 at the immigration services. The visa waiver would allow for this additional service to be available for businessmen.
Did you notice some change in investors' attitude after Trump got elected?
I have not noticed any changes in terms of U.S. interest in Romania, in terms of having a active commercial and business relationship. We meet daily. Our firm has had new mandates, new clients since the Trump administration took office. So I'm not concerned about the current Trump policy in terms of making America great again and focusing on the U.S. The current market, I think, allows for significant U.S. investments in the region. Again, I think Romania needs to be a stronger regional leader. I think the U.S. administration, current U.S. administration, likes to talk to regional leaders who are strong. So Romania needs to work on this front to consolidate its position as a regional leader.
Which country would you say poses most competition, the biggest competition to Romania regionally?
I think it depends on the industries. I think the fact that Romania has decided to spend 2% of its GDP and invest that in the defense sector ultimately makes Romania more attractive from a defense industry perspective, which clearly has significant IT components. I would be keen to see the manufacturing components, which I think should be linked to the actual purchase of defense capabilities. This is something that Romania needs to prepare for.
And one of the last questions would be to compare a bit the past with the present and think about the future. When you first took the job in McGuireWoods, what was Romania like in the eyes of investors, and how is the situation now? And where would you hope to see Romania in 10 years' time?
Sure. So in March 2007, when I arrived in Bucharest after 10 years in the US, where I studied and worked, I found a Romania that was at the peak of its privatization process. That was the time we had the largest privatizations. Romania was searching for strategic investors to come and take over those Romanian assets. I think today we have a situation where we're looking at more mergers and acquisitions than privatizations. I think from a labor perspective, we're looking at attracting workforce from abroad, because we know Romania no longer has the capability in certain sectors. So by the way, I would hope to see a more flexible workforce legislation that allows individuals from outside of the EU to travel and work on a temporary basis in order to support the Romanian economy and the investors in Romania. I think we have a great benefit to be a regional player in terms of training workers from non-EU countries. I know there's such a relationship with Serbia, with Ukraine, with Georgia. So we need to make sure that we have the necessary legislation that encourages this exchange and training to be done in Romania. In 2007, when I arrived in Bucharest, we would have our personnel train abroad. 10 years, 11 years later, we have the capability to train individuals and professionals and workers from other countries, but we need the appropriate legislation to make business easier.